appraising the article, I also extract the data because it's faster that way. As with appraisal, I need to also read the article. And for data extraction, it's best to use tables because usually these tables are also included in your review article. And the tables I use is usually as follows. So I write the study and then the study design, and then what they do, what interventions they do, and what are the outcomes. And I also usually include sample size just to be sure if they're big or small, and where are the location, especially if what I'm making is geographically specific, like the maternal factors associated with preeclampsia in Asia paper that I made before. And I usually also include a column about notes. So notes is basically everything else that is interesting in the article. Like, for example, the limitations or some discussions they write about that topic that can be included in our own review articles. So that won't be included in the table for the review article, but we can use that for reference. Yeah, but you don't need to follow all these columns. It's just a suggestions. And lastly, what you need to do is, of course, to start writing. And for that, you need to first know the structure of literature review. So this is a literature review for like a complete standalone article. If you're writing a literature review for a proposal or a proposal for original research, then it has a different structure, but usually it has similar content, something like that. And for this structure, I'm going to focus more on the standalone literature review. So usually it's very similar to the research article we find on the internet. It has introduction, methods, results and discussion, and conclusion. But in methods, well, methods is optional once again, especially for narrative literature review. And the introduction, don't forget to include the aim of the study. What do you want to do? Like, for example, if you're writing about maternal factors associated with preeclampsia in Asia, then what you aim to do is to analyze it, something like that. And then in results and discussion, because we are summarizing a topic, what you need to do is to break into thematic areas. For example, if you're going back to the gender peak sample, you can have an area about like the medical aspect of it, and then the ethical implications, and then the economical implications, something like that. To make it more interesting, you can acknowledge controversies, bias, differing opinions between articles, because sometimes you can find different articles writing different things. Like, for example, the result is significantly good in article A, and then it's bad in article B. So you can discuss that, differing opinions and differing results, because that's what makes the literature review more comprehensive and interesting. And you should also always write about the appraisal, like how is their methods, is it good enough or not? And lastly, of course, there's conclusion. And okay, I will answer about the original research structure in a few minutes. So firstly, I would like to explain more about the writing tip. Like, so in writing, you need to keep the review focused but relevant to a broad audience. So like, I think I've mentioned that in the first part of the presentation, and you need to be critical and consistent, including in your own research. So don't forget to be objective. And it's easier for the reader to understand what you mean if you summarize your findings into tables and diagrams. And lastly, of course, for writing, you need to ask for feedbacks. So now, as for the structure for proposal, so usually it's in the second part of the proposal, and the structure is basically similar, but you don't really need to write the name as introduction. So for example, if we're writing about a proposal about an original research of maternal factors associated with preeclampsia in Indonesia, firstly, it usually consists of introduction still, but the introduction is usually not termed as introduction, but rather as the current situation of preeclampsia, something like that. And then you can go to the next part. So you basically still break it into thematic areas, but you don't write it as results and conclusion, results and discussion or introduction. So for maternal factors of preeclampsia in Indonesia, the first topic would be about current condition of preeclampsia in Indonesia, and then continue to the known factors of preeclampsia in the world, and then you can continue to the condition in Indonesia, for example, and yeah, basically something like that. Basically, you still divide it into thematic areas, but you don't need to write it as introduction or results and discussion. And so we're back to the literature review as a standalone article. So in making a diagram, well, it can sometimes be tricky to start. So this is a diagram I made myself for the gene therapy article. I used PowerPoint. It's totally feasible to use fully PowerPoint for that, but it takes a long time. So I suggest you to instead use Adobe Photoshop or Adobe Illustrator. They have better tools that can help you draw a diagram faster. And what's important in making a diagram is that you need to be careful not to reproduce or edit a diagram without obtaining an appropriate license. Because I did this once with an article I do about gene therapy and HIV. And I just realized, because that was like my first time editing a diagram from another source, I realized before I published the articles that I actually need to pay to do this, to do so. So always check on it. Some diagrams are licensed under Creative Commons, meaning that you don't need to pay anything. You just need to write the like the name of the author and the article, but sometimes you need to pay to do so. So always look for it. And then the other tricky part is to write your references, especially in narrative review, because you need to write to include as many as 80 references minimum. And what you can do is to use a reference manager. I usually use Mendeley, so this is Mendeley, but you can also use Zotero, EndNote, and other reference manager. So if you know any other reference manager, please write in the chat box so we can know more about what reference manager can be used. So this is particularly important because usually the reference manager have this tool that can automatically change the data of the bibliometric data of your article that are included into a different citation format. So if you know, there are different citing format like Vancouver, AMA, APA, and other types of format. In medicine, we use either the Vancouver or American Medical Associated or AMA style, but well, sometimes the journal has different format ask. So always look at the guideline, and that's where the reference manager comes in handy. Because, for example, if you already make the reference in Vancouver, but the journal asks for AMA, you can just change the settings, and then they will give you a different type of format. So always use this. It's pretty life-changing, I think, in terms of research. So not only for literature review, but also for original research. It's always handy. And lastly, this is the example of literature review that I made with my friends. So this is a mini review because we only include about 80 references. So this is the title, of course, and this is the abstract, and keywords. The keywords should also be from mesh terms because we want people to be able to search for it. And in the introduction, don't forget to write the aim. And even though this review is a narrative review, we decided to still include the methods, although it's not like a comprehensive method like what should be included in systematic review articles. And then these are the results. So we divide into some thematic areas. Firstly, we write about the current available treatment for Angelman syndrome, and then we write about the future. And lastly, we made about in the discussion, we focus on the firstly about like why the therapy is important, why gene therapy is important, where does it place in the current situation. Like for example, symptomatic approaches cause a major burden of healthcare resource utilization. So the treatment needs to be targeting the cause for it instead of only symptomatic. And then we further summarize the gene therapy strategies that are already in the database, like something like this. But then we also critically analyze the strategies that are included. So for example, firstly, the studies are still only conducted in mouse, and then there are information that the bioavailability of the gene therapy strategies is not really clear, especially in the CNS, because it has like different physiology compared to other system. And that, well, basically like what are the limitations that needs to be thought before the gene therapy strategy can be used in actual patients. And we also include the discussions about ethical and economical concerns, something like that. And lastly, there's this conclusion. And there's some other topics to consider if you want. So you can include about women's health. There are some issues that you can include here about COVID-19, for example. And you can also write review articles about our situation as healthcare workforce. For example, this diagram I got from the World Health Organization shows some of our problems in healthcare workforce, especially as a woman, something like that. And climate change is also an emerging topic that is interesting now. So you can, if you go back to the first step, we want to ensure that we have a broad audience, and one way to do so is to write a hot topic, and climate change is one of the hot topics at the moment, especially as there was just the COP25 last year. So yeah, you can consider writing about it. And so these are my sources. If you want to learn more about literature review and how to write it, you can look into this. Thank you. So if you want to contact me or GHF, you can go into this social media and email. So I'm now open to questions. I think there are some questions already here that I haven't answered. So I think I'm going to start with that. Is it okay? Yeah, is it okay?
Yes. So thank you very much. I think you can proceed with the questions in the chat. And after which, anyone that has other questions can proceed to ask the question.
Okay. So firstly, it's from Tayu. So, well, do you know any of large community of research writers? There are a lot of communities actually, one of which is Global Health Focus, of course, which is the community I am in. I think it's a good community to be in if you're interested in global health and public health. If you're interested in medicine, then there are some other communities. So usually how I look for the communities, I just look in Google or in Facebook, and you can directly contact the the page or the person in charge. But please remember not to be on a community that is quite shady. By shady, I mean like sometimes they want you to write, but they don't really give you enough recognition. And some of these community is already known, but I believe I cannot speak about the name here. So if you want to know, you can message me in person, but always be careful, because since we are young, sometimes we can be our talents and energy can somehow be exploited by those people. So always look for a community that is that wants us to grow together. And I believe that JHF is one of them. And I think ThoraSafe also once again have a community of research writers in progress, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong, please. But yeah, I think that can also be where to start. And yeah, I think I answered some of, okay, there's also a question from Jeremiah. There's an event about climate change that occurred last year. It's where the governments they were together for a meeting in Paris. It's called COP25. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. I think it's either COP or COP25. So it was in Paris, I think. And yeah, it basically is like the biggest climate change event happening last year, because it shows the government's pledge to ending climate change. There are basically some action points that both developed countries and developing countries want to do to ensure and stop the global warming, something like that. And it's a very important topic for health as well, because the WHO, they have a session there. And for the first time, there is this whole session about climate change impact to health. And so that's also one of the reasons why it's an emerging topic and a hot topic at the moment. So if you're interested about climate change, then you can consider writing about it. Like you can consider, for example, writing about the impact of the COP25 to climate change, or like summarizing the current situation of climate change and health systems, how they are how well the health system is resilient to climate change, something like that. So basically, since it's now a hot topic, you can write anything about it. And yeah, I think I answered the questions that are in the chat box. Maybe if there's another question.
Yeah, so at this juncture, if anyone has any question, you can just let me know so that you'll be given the platform to ask a question, or you can just also put it in the chat so that the facilitator will address them. So the facilitator has projected her details and also has placed them on the chat menu, so you can feel free to contact her on any other issues or inquiry that you want her to clarify for you. And once again, MD Adriana, that was really an awesome presentation today. Myself, I really enjoyed it. Yes, I actually reviewed a narrative review last week from her science report, but myself, I'm yet to write more of these papers, narrative review, systemic analysis. So I'll be grateful to contact you about how you went about it, and also to get myself abreast with it. Once again, it's a great presentation today from you. Yeah, so we are giving ourselves the next minute. If anyone else has a question, we would like to address that. For the next 2-3 minutes, yes, if anyone is having a question. So once again, today is the third section of the research training, and next week we are meeting at the same time for another interesting presentation from another facilitator, which is also going to be great. And I expect all of you to join on time, and also encourage others who have been absent to be joining, not only to be paying for the certificate. You have to get the knowledge fixed. And also, if even after the section you still have any inquiry questions or any concern, just feel free and put them on the Telegram page and they'll all be addressed. So that's one reason why we have the Telegram page. All questions will be addressed. So I think there's another question on the chat bottom. Is saying that, yes, about literature review. Please, I didn't get the tools you use for literature review and getting legit references. Yes, I think.
Okay, thank you for the question, Define. So I think what you're asking is about the database. Am I correct? So I think I can go back to the slide about it. So in order to get like a legit reference, what you need to do is to search into a medical research database or any research database. So some of these databases are only focusing on medicine, like PubMed, EBSCOhost, I think Cochrane and Embase as well. But some databases are more general, like Science Direct, Google Scholar, and also Scopus. So these are basically websites on the internet that you can search there, like Google, something like that. And so those are usually legit references already, because in order to be in that database, you need to be on like a journal, and there are some criterias that needs to be fulfilled by the journals in order to be featured on the databases. So by looking into these databases, it's already being legit. But at the same time, sometimes the quality of the references can be low. So sometimes the quality of the study included in these journals can be low compared to other types of studies. And what you need to do is that you can do critical appraisal about it. So you can basically, I think in the it's in the next part. Yeah, you can do this. You can appraise and analyze the quality of the paper by reading it, and also um, especially looking at the methods section and see if it has bias or not, etc. And then you can choose on whether to include the article or not. So in the inclusion and exclusion criteria, you can actually also include the results of your critical appraisal if what you make is systematic review. For example, some critical appraisal tools can be very numerical. So like the Strobe one is numerical. Out of the 22, there is the scoring beside it. So for example, you don't want to include articles with low quality evidence shown with a score of Strobe of less than 5, for example. So you can also include that in your inclusion and exclusion criteria in order to ensure that references are even more legit. Although if you include that if you include articles in the database, it's actually already legit compared to if you include news articles, which are usually not included in review articles. So I hope it answers the question. So do I answer a question? And feel free to clarify the question if you still have any questions.
Okay, so that was okay. MD, I would like to ask, I think on behalf of myself and the audience, apart from the normal referencing tools that we use for the general research, like Mendeley, Zotero, EndNote, is there a particular referencing tool that's well designed to be able to do systemic review and meta-analysis? Since that one involves a lot of work, is there particular referencing tools for them?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yes, I was asking if, apart from the general referencing tool that we use for our regional research and other studies, in doing systemic review and meta-analysis, is there a particular referencing tool you recommend for someone to enhance easy work of the referencing in those particular fields? Since in that research studies, you are going to handle a large referencing tools and looking at them at a go.
Oh, you mean like the reference manager?
Yes.
Yeah, I actually only know Mendeley, Zotero, and EndNote. So you don't need to use all three. You just need to use like one.
So apart from that, is there a particular one aside those ones that you recommend for systemic reviews?
I think I don't have at the moment because I usually use Mendeley.
Okay.
I strongly suggest Mendeley because they have an add-on for Google that you can directly use. So sometimes, especially in Vancouver, you need to cite in text. So for example, perhaps you're familiar with the brackets with the numbers.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it can be taxing to write it from the beginning manually. So Mendeley has that tool for Word, Microsoft Word, that can help. And I think they also have one in Google Docs. I'm not sure. And they have also a tool to directly. So they have this Mendeley internet, I think, that can directly extract your references without you having to manually enter it.
Yes.
Yeah, in the internet. So I usually use Mendeley, but I also heard that Zotero is good. And well, I think if you want to look for other types of reference manager, you can just write reference manager, and perhaps you can find other tools. But those are basically just tools. So you can use anything that you prefer. But the important thing is to preferably use one, at least one. So because it's like it will make life so much more easier.
Yes, sure. So that's it. Thank you very much. And I don't know if anyone else has a question. That is a great presentation. Me, myself, I've been using EndNote. That seems very simple to me. I really like EndNote because I've gotten to know much advantages of EndNote. So I don't know if no one else has a question. MDU, please give your last words as we end today's session because it's been great having you for today. Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening. I hope it's clear, and I hope it can help kickstart your journey in writing review articles. I believe that review articles is actually an important avenue for you to start your research journey as a whole, because you need to first learn to write and learn to critically analyze a topic before you dig deeper into original research articles. I don't mean that you cannot do original research first before publishing in literature review, but publishing a literature review has its own benefits. It can help you navigate through the publication process. It can help you hone your critical thinking, something like that. So yeah, I strongly suggest starting from literature review. And once again, thank you. So I hope you can gain something from this session. And thank you also for Torasif and for Ebenezer for organizing this session. It's really been an honor and, well, a blast to be here and to meet you virtually. I hope someday we can meet not virtually. And
Yes.
I hope to keep in touch with everyone actually. So feel free to contact me. And I'm also once again on the Telegram group. So if you have any questions, feel free to write that there as well.
So thank you very much. And to our dear participants, thank you for joining today's section and hope to see you all next week. Thank you. Bye.